The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Ambassador Cathara sat in her floating chair, watching as the holographic display showed yet another red dot disappear from the star map. That was the Morian system. Gone. Just like the 12 other systems that had fallen in the past week, the Zephyrian invasion fleet moved through space like a disease. Their black ships appeared without warning, destroyed everything that could fight back and left nothing but empty planets behind. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They just killed. The defense fleet at Zarian lasted only 4 hours. General Voxtar reported, his forearm shaking as he spoke. Their weapons had no effect on Zephyrian armor. Our best shields collapsed in minutes. Cathara closed her eyes. The Zarian defense fleet had been the strongest in the Outer Rim. If they could not stop the Zephyrians, nothing could. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 100 different species sat in stunned silence. The Talani with their crystal bodies glowed dim with fear. The gas-breathing Nephites floated nervously in their environmental suits. Even the proud warrior kings of Deltara looked defeated. "We must consider evacuation," said Counselor Yithron, her tentacles curled tight with stress. "Move our populations to the inner systems while we still can. And then what?" General Voxtar slammed his fist on the table. "Wait for them to follow us there? We have seen their ships. They are faster than ours, stronger than ours. Their technology is beyond our understanding." The argument that followed was the same one they had been having for weeks. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to run. A few suggested trying to communicate with the invaders. None of it mattered. Every strategy had failed. Every weapon had proven useless. Every attempt at communication had been met with silence and death. Cathara stood up slowly. As one of the oldest members of the council, her words carried weight. The chamber fell quiet. "There is something we have not tried," she said softly. "What?" several voices asked at once. Cathara hesitated. What she was about to suggest would likely get her exiled from the council. Maybe executed, but as she watched another system disappear from the map, she realized they had no choice. "The humans," she said. The reaction was immediate. Shouts of anger and fear filled the chamber. Several representatives stood up so fast they knocked over their chairs. "Absolutely not," General Voxtar roared. "We quarantined those monsters for good reason." "They are too dangerous," added Counselor Yithron. "Their violence knows no bounds." "They would kill us all," screamed someone from the back. Cathara waited for the noise to die down. She had expected this reaction. 200 years ago, when humans had first achieved faster-than-light travel, they had been welcomed into galactic society. That welcome had lasted exactly 3 months. The humans had been unlike any species the galaxy had ever encountered. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and seemed to enjoy conflict. During their first diplomatic meeting, they had gotten into a fistfight with the Deltaran ambassador over a minor trade disagreement. When pirates attacked a human cargo ship, the humans had not just defended themselves, they had tracked down the pirates' base and destroyed it completely. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to think violence was fun. They had competitions to see who could fight better. They told stories about wars like they were entertainment. They made games about killing things. The final straw had come when a human exploration ship discovered a Zephyrian probe in deep space. Instead of reporting it to the council like any civilized species would do, they had attacked it. The probe had been destroyed, but not before sending a signal back to wherever it came from. The council had been terrified. The Zephyrians were legends, an ancient species that had wiped out entire civilizations eons ago before disappearing into the void. If they returned and found that the humans had attacked them, it could mean war for everyone. So the humans had been quarantined, locked in their home system with automated defense stations to keep them in. The official reason was to protect galactic peace and security. The real reason was that everyone was afraid of them. "I know what we decided about the humans," Cathara continued. "But that was before. Look at our situation now." She gestured to the display. More than half the Outer Rim territories were gone. The Zephyrian fleet was moving toward the core worlds. In a few weeks, maybe less, they would reach the major population centers. "Our combined fleets have less than 1,000 ships left," she said. "The Zephyrians have tens of thousands. Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields. Our computers cannot predict their tactics. We are going to lose." So you want to call the most violent species in the galaxy for help? General Voxtar asked. What makes you think they would not just join the Zephyrians, or attack us while we are weak? Kethara had been thinking about that question for days. The truth was she did not know what the humans would do. No one did. That was what made them so frightening, and potentially so useful. Because, she said carefully, humans do not like being told what to do. They have been locked in their system for 2 centuries. If there is anyone who might want to fight the Zephyrians just for the chance to get out, it would be them. The debate went on for hours. Some council members threatened to leave if the humans were contacted. Others argued that they were all going to die anyway, so what did it matter? Finally, a vote was called. It was close, closer than Kethara had expected, but in the end fear won over pride. The motion to contact the humans failed by just 3 votes. Kethara sat back down, feeling older than her 400 years. Outside the windows of the council chamber, she could see the lights of the capital city. Millions of beings going about their lives not knowing that everything was about to end. She made her decision then and there. That night, Kethara returned to her private quarters and activated her personal communication system. What she was about to do was treason. Breaking the quarantine treaty was punishable by death. But as she began composing a message to the Sol system, she realized she did not care anymore. The message was simple. To the humans of Earth, this is Ambassador Kethara of the Galactic Council. Our worlds are under attack by a force we cannot defeat. We need help. We know what we did to you. We know you have no reason to trust us, but if you still care about anything beyond your own system, please respond. She attached everything they knew about the Zephyrians, their ship designs, their weapons, their tactics. If the humans were going to help, they would need all the information available. As she sent the transmission toward the distant Sol system, Kethara wondered if she was making the biggest mistake in galactic history. But as another star system disappeared from the tactical display, she knew she had made the only choice left. Now all she could do was wait and hope that the galaxy's most dangerous species would be willing to save it. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing patrol reports when the communication alert sounded. Her coffee mug froze halfway to her lips as she read the priority level. Ultra-classified direct transmission from outside the Sol system. That should have been impossible. The quarantine barrier had been in place for 200 years. Nothing got in or out without the automated defense stations detecting it. But here was a message, transmitted on frequencies that only a few people in the Sol Defense Force even knew existed. Sarah opened the file and began to read. Her expression changed from confusion to surprise to something that made her aide take a step back. Lieutenant Rodriguez had served under Admiral Chen for 5 years, but he had never seen her smile like that. Rodriguez, Sarah said, still reading the message. Get me Fleet Command. Priority Alpha. Yes, ma'am. Should I tell them what it's about? Sarah looked up from the display and Rodriguez could see excitement burning in her eyes like fire. Tell them, she said slowly, that someone just invited us to a party. Within an hour, every senior officer in the Sol Defense Force was crammed into the main briefing room at Luna Command. The holographic display showed the alien message in full detail, along with specifications for something called Zephyrian battle cruisers. Admiral Marcus Webb, the head of fleet operations, leaned forward in his chair. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. The same aliens who locked us in our own system are now asking for help? That's correct, Sarah replied. And they're offering us everything they know about an enemy that even they can't defeat. Could be a trap, suggested General Park from the Marine Corps. Could be, Sarah agreed. But look at these specifications. She highlighted the Zephyrian ship designs. These things are massive. Advanced armor, energy weapons we've never seen before, and they move in coordinated fleets of thousands. Commander Torres from the Engineering Corps whistled softly. Their power output is off the charts. How do you fight something like that? Very carefully, said Admiral Webb. Or not at all. Maybe we should stay right here where it's safe. The room fell quiet. For 2 centuries, that had been humanity's reality. Stay safe, stay contained. Stay in their assigned corner of space while the rest of the galaxy went about its business. Sarah stood up and walked to the display. Gentlemen, ladies, we've been asking the same question for 200 years. What would we do if we ever got out? How would we explore the galaxy? How would we take our place among the stars? She turned to face the room full of officers. Well, now we have our answer. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to fight. Against impossible odds? Asked General Park. Those are the best kind, Sarah replied. The planning session that followed would have horrified the Galactic Council. Where civilized species would have spent months analyzing the situation and developing careful strategies, the humans dove straight into logistics and tactics. How fast can we mobilize? Sarah asked. The Third Fleet can be ready in 48 hours, Admiral Webb replied. That's 30 ships, including carriers. Not enough, Sarah said immediately. What about the reserve fleets? Another 60 ships, but they'll need a week to prepare. Make it 3 days. Sarah, Admiral Webb said carefully, these ships were designed for system defense. They're not equipped for deep space operations or extended combat. Sarah looked at him like he had just said something very stupid. Marcus, we've been preparing for this war our entire lives. We just didn't know who we'd be fighting. She was right, and everyone in the room knew it. The Sol Defense Force had been built on the assumption that someday, somehow, humanity would have to fight its way out of quarantine. Every ship design, every weapon system, every training exercise had been focused on one goal: being ready for war against superior alien technology. What about personnel? Asked General Park. Sarah smiled again, and Lieutenant Rodriguez felt another chill run down his spine. Open volunteer recruitment. Full deployment, Admiral, Commander Torres said slowly. That could mean millions of people. Good, Sarah replied. We'll need them. The recruitment announcement went out across every human colony and space station. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Veterans came out of retirement. Civilians with no military training signed up for crash courses. Entire families volunteered together. The alien observers monitoring the Sol system from their distant posts could not believe what they were seeing. Instead of careful deliberation and reluctant preparation, the humans were celebrating. They were throwing parties. They were singing songs about war and glory and finally getting their chance to show the galaxy what they could do. Dr. Yixtal, a neophyte xenobiologist studying human behavior, sent increasingly panicked reports back to the Council. They are not behaving like any species facing extinction should behave, his latest report read. They appear to be excited about the prospect of combat. They are modifying civilian ships into warships. They are manufacturing weapons at rates that suggest they have been planning for this scenario for decades. But the most disturbing observation was yet to come. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as the assembled human fleet took formation. 200 ships stretched out in every direction, from massive battleships to converted cargo haulers bristling with improvised weapons. All ships report ready, Admiral, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. Sarah nodded and activated the fleet communication system. On every ship in the formation, humans stopped what they were doing to listen. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, today we break the chains that have held us for 200 years. Today we go to war not just for ourselves, but for an entire galaxy that needs our help. She paused, looking out at the fleet that represented the dreams of every human who had ever stared at the stars and wondered what was out there. They called us monsters, she continued. They said we were too dangerous for civilized society. They locked us away because they were afraid of what we might do. Another pause. Throughout the fleet, humans were grinning. Well, Sarah said, let's go show them they were right to be afraid. The cheering that followed could be heard across every communication frequency. As the human fleet powered up their faster-than-light drives and prepared to break quarantine for the first time in centuries, alien monitoring stations throughout the sector detected something that made their operators' blood run cold. The humans were not just going to war. They were going to war happily. Dr. Yixtal's final report to the Council was short and terrifying. We have made a mistake. The quarantine was not to protect the galaxy from humans. It was to protect humans from us. Now they are free, and they are bringing weapons we never imagined and tactics we cannot understand. The Zephyrians may have met their match. The question is, what happens to the rest of us when the battle is over? The Altaris system had been beautiful once. 4 planets orbited a gentle yellow star. The 4th planet home to the Veltar, a peaceful species known throughout the galaxy for their art and philosophy. Now the 4th planet was on fire. Captain Maria Santos watched the destruction from the bridge of her ship, the UES Havoc. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like black daggers, their energy weapons turning cities into glass. Millions of Veltar were dying while their defense fleet tried desperately to fight back. Jesus, whispered Sergeant Kim from the tactical station. Look at the size of those things. The Zephyrian ships were massive, each one the size of a human city. They moved with perfect coordination, their weapons firing in patterns that seemed almost beautiful if you forgot. They were killing people. Contact from Admiral Chen, reported Lieutenant Walsh. Human fleet is approaching, from the far side of the system. We're cleared for immediate assault. Maria nodded. Around her, the bridge crew was preparing for battle with the kind of calm efficiency that came from years of training and a healthy respect for violent death. But there was something else in the air too. Something that the galaxy had never understood about humans. They were having fun. All right, people, Maria announced over the ship's communication system. Welcome to our first real fight in 200 years. Let's make it count. Throughout the ship, Marines were checking their weapons and singing old war songs. Engineers were making final adjustments to equipment that had been built for exactly this moment. Everyone was grinning. Zephyrian vessels are not responding to our communications, Lieutenant Walsh reported. They don't seem to care that we're here. Their mistake, Maria replied. All ships, this is Havoc Actual. Remember what we practiced. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and try not to die. Execute Operation Party Crasher. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries, though none of them would ever really understand it. The human fleet did not form up in the careful battle lines that every other species used. They did not try to match the enemy's tactics or engage from maximum range with their heaviest weapons. Instead, they charged. 200 human ships accelerated directly toward the Zephyrian fleet, their crews broadcasting music at maximum volume. The songs ranged from ancient battle hymns to modern rock music. All of it played so loud that it overwhelmed every communication frequency in the system. The Zephyrians, who had been calmly destroying the Veltar defense fleet, suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. An enemy that was attacking them while singing. All vessels, break formation and go weapons free, Maria shouted over the noise. Remember, we're not trying to outfight them. We're trying to out-crazy them. The human ships scattered in every direction, each one heading for a different Zephyrian vessel. Instead of using long-range weapons, they closed to point-blank range and began firing everything they had. Missiles, energy beams, and projectile weapons hammered against Zephyrian shields, but that was just the beginning. Ramming speed, came a voice over the communications. It was Captain Thompson from the converted cargo hauler UES Sledgehammer. If you can't shoot through it, go through it. The Sledgehammer, loaded with 500 Marines and more explosives than should have fit in any single ship, slammed into the side of a Zephyrian battlecruiser. The impact tore a hole 30 meters wide in the alien ship's hull. Breaching teams, go! Thompson's voice was filled with joy even as his ship was tearing apart around him. Take that thing apart! Human Marines poured through the breach, wearing powered armor and carrying weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. What they found inside the Zephyrian vessel confused them at first. There were no crew quarters, no food storage, no life support systems for organic beings. The ship was filled with machinery and computer systems, all of it working together in perfect harmony. They're robots, Sergeant Martinez reported over the radio. The whole ship is just one big machine. That news spread quickly through the human fleet, and the reaction was immediate. Robots? Came Admiral Chen's voice from the fleet flagship. Well, that makes this easier. No prisoners to worry about. Take them apart, people. What the humans had discovered was exactly what the Zephyrians were. An artificial intelligence that had been created millions of years ago by a long-dead species. They were perfect war machines, designed to analyze enemy tactics and develop counters for every possible strategy. But they had never encountered humans before. The human attack made no sense to the Zephyrian minds. The tactics were random. The weapons were mixed together in ways that violated every law of military efficiency, and the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. The Zephyrian computers tried to analyze the human battle patterns and failed. There were no patterns. The humans were making it up as they went along. Maria, this is Chen. How's your boarding operation going? Captain Santos was crouched behind a piece of Zephyrian machinery, directing her Marines as they fought their way through the alien ship. Around her, the sound of gunfire mixed with human laughter. Going great, Admiral, she replied, ducking as energy beams flew over her head. These things fight like computers. Very predictable once you figure out their programming. Any ideas on how to shut them down? Maria looked around the ship interior. Everything was connected to everything else through data cables and power conduits. It looked like a giant brain made of metal and circuits. Sergeant Kim, she called out. Yes, ma'am. You still got those demo charges? Kim patted the explosive devices attached to his armor, enough to level a city block. Good, I have an idea. What Captain Santos had realized was something that would never have occurred to the civilized species of the galaxy. Instead of trying to fight the Zephyrian ship system by system, she was going to break the whole thing at once. All Marines, plant charges on anything that looks important. We're going to turn this thing into scrap metal. Ma'am, Sergeant Martinez called out, are we sure we want to be inside the ship when we blow it up? Maria grinned. Where's your sense of adventure, Sergeant? The explosions that followed lit up the Altaris system like a new star. The Zephyrian battlecruiser broke apart from the inside out, its perfect coordination destroyed by human explosives placed with no regard for safety or logic. But more importantly, the destruction of one Zephyrian ship seemed to confuse the others. For the first time since the invasion had begun, Zephyrian vessels hesitated. Their perfect tactics faltered as they tried to understand what had just happened. All human vessels, came Admiral Chen's voice over the communications. The enemy is confused. Press the attack. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships continued their chaotic assault, ramming Zephyrian vessels, boarding them with Marines who treated the whole thing like a dangerous game, and using tactics that made no sense to anyone except other humans. By the time it was over, the Zephyrian fleet was retreating, not destroyed but actually running away from an enemy they could not predict or understand. Captain Santos stood on the bridge of her battered ship, watching the alien vessels jump to faster-than-light speed. Around the system, human ships were celebrating, their crews singing victory songs and comparing notes on the battle. Admiral, she reported to Chen, Altaris system is secure. The Zephyrians are gone. Outstanding work, Maria. How are your casualties? Maria checked her reports. Light, surprisingly. Turns out these things aren't very good at fighting enemies who don't follow the rules. Admiral Chen's laughter came across the communication. Well then, I guess it's a good thing we never learned the rules. On the fourth planet of Altaris, the surviving Veltar watched in amazement as human ships descended from orbit. They had expected to die that day. Instead, they had been saved by the same species that the galaxy called monsters. Ambassador Cathara, monitoring the battle from the Galactic Council chambers, sat back in her chair and smiled for the first time in months. Her gamble had worked. The humans had come, they had fought, and they had won. But as she watched the human fleet preparing to move deeper into Zephyrian territory, she wondered if she had just solved one problem by creating another. The galaxy's most dangerous species was no longer contained, and they were just getting started. The forward command post in the liberated Altaris system looked like organized chaos. Human engineers had taken over 3 Zephyrian ships, stripped them down to their basic components, and spread the pieces across the entire 4th planet. Alien technology mixed with human tools in ways that should not have worked but somehow did. Admiral Chen walked through the main research facility, watching her people work with a mixture of pride and concern. At one table, a Marine sergeant was showing a group of Veltar scientists how to turn a Zephyrian energy weapon into a mining tool. At another, human computer specialists were arguing with an AI core they had pulled from a destroyed ship. Admiral, called out Dr. James Park, the fleet's head of alien technology research. You need to see this. Sarah followed him to a laboratory where the remains of a Zephyrian command unit were spread across multiple tables. The alien technology was beautiful in its way, all smooth curves and efficient design. It also looked completely indestructible. We figured out how they work, Dr. Park explained, pointing to a device that looked like a metal brain. Each ship has an AI core that connects to every system. They share information instantly across their entire fleet. Perfect coordination, perfect tactics, perfect efficiency. So how do we beat perfect? Sarah asked. Dr. Park grinned. We don't try to be perfect. We try to be impossible. He led her to another table where Lieutenant Commander Torres was working on what looked like a Zephyrian weapon attached to a human power core with spare parts from a coffee machine. The Zephyrians think in patterns, Torres explained. Their whole strategy is based on predicting what enemies will do and countering it. But our weapons don't follow their patterns because we're building them from scratch. To demonstrate, he activated the hybrid device. It fired a beam of energy that changed color 3 times, made a sound like a dying whale, and left a hole in the wall that was shaped like a flower. "That should not work," said a voice behind them. Sarah turned to see Kethara approaching, flanked by 2 human Marines. The alien ambassador had arrived on Alteris that morning, the first member of the Galactic Council to visit a human military base in 2 centuries. "Ambassador," Sarah said politely, "welcome to our little workshop." Kethara looked around the facility with obvious amazement and horror. Humans were taking apart technology that represented millions of years of advanced civilization and rebuilding it like children playing with toys. Even worse, it was working. "How?" Kethara asked simply. "How what?" Sarah replied. "How are you doing any of this? These weapons should be impossible to modify. This technology should be beyond your understanding. These tactics should not work against Zephyrian planning algorithms." Dr. Park laughed. "That's the point. We're not trying to understand it. We're just trying to break it in interesting ways." To illustrate his point, he picked up a Zephyrian shield generator and began connecting it to a human sensor array. "This device is designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles. But what if we reverse the field and use it to throw things instead?" He activated the device and a wrench flew across the room, embedding itself in the wall. "Terrible shield," he announced cheerfully. "Pretty good catapult." Kethara stared at the wrench sticking out of the wall. In her 400 years of life, she had never seen anyone treat advanced technology with such casual disrespect. It was like watching barbarians play with fire. "Your people do realize that you're dismantling devices that took centuries to develop?" she asked. "Sure," Torres replied. "That's what makes it fun." Admiral Chen guided Kethara to the command center, where human officers were planning the next phase of the war. The main display showed Zephyrian positions throughout the sector, marked in red. Human forces were marked in blue. The pattern of blue dots moving through red territory looked random, but Sarah knew better. "We're not trying to match their tactics," she explained. "We're trying to confuse them. Every human ship group is using different approaches. Some are fighting directly, others are conducting raids. A few are just flying around playing music very loudly." "Playing music?" "Psychological warfare," Sarah said seriously. "The Zephyrians are trying to analyze our behavior patterns. If we do random things, their computers crash from processing overload." On cue, a communication came in from Captain Rodriguez of the UES Carnival. "Admiral, we found another Zephyrian patrol fleet. Permission to engage with Operation Disco Ball?" "Granted, Captain. Try not to break reality this time." "No promises, ma'am." Kethara watched as the tactical display showed the Carnival and its escort ships approaching a Zephyrian formation. Instead of attacking normally, the human ships began spinning in circles while firing their weapons in all directions. The resulting light show was visible from orbit. "They're dancing," Kethara said weakly. "Dancing while shooting," Sarah corrected. "It's surprisingly effective." The Zephyrian ships on the display began moving erratically, their formation falling apart as their tactical computers tried to process what they were seeing. Eventually, they simply fled the system, rather than face an enemy that was impossible to understand. "This is not how civilized species conduct warfare," Kethara protested. "Good thing we're not civilized," replied Colonel Martinez, who had just walked into the command center. "Ma'am, the prisoner interrogation is ready." Sarah nodded and gestured for Kethara to follow. The alien ambassador was curious about human interrogation techniques, though she was not sure she wanted to know. They walked to a secured area where a group of human technicians were working on a Zephyrian AI core. The device was still active, its lights pulsing as it tried to communicate. "We figured out how to talk to them," explained Sergeant Kim, who had become the fleet's expert on Zephyrian computer systems. "Turns out they're very chatty once you get past their firewalls." "Firewalls?" Kethara asked. "Computer security," Sarah explained. "These AIs are designed to protect their information. But Sergeant Kim used to work in cybersecurity before joining the Marines. I hacked their entire command network," Kim said proudly. "Now we know everything they know. Battle plans, ship positions, even their construction schedules." The Zephyrian AI spoke through a translator device, its voice mechanical and confused. Query: why do human units deviate from logical tactical patterns? Kim leaned closer to the device. Because logic is boring. Next question. Query. What is the strategic value of musical broadcasts during combat operations? Makes us happy. Happy soldiers fight better. Query. Why do human forces repair damaged enemy technology for non-military purposes? Kim looked at the coffee machine they had built using Zephyrian parts. Because we wanted coffee and your food replicators suck. The AI core pulsed frantically as it tried to process these answers. Finally, it asked the question that had been bothering every Zephyrian unit since the war began. Query, what does humanity want? Kim thought about this for a moment, then smiled. To see what's on the other side of that hill. And when we get there, to see what's on the other side of the next hill. The AI core went silent for several minutes. When it spoke again, its voice had changed somehow. It sounded almost worried. Statement. This unit cannot calculate probability of mission success against enemy with no defined objectives. That's the idea, Kim replied. Later that evening, Admiral Chen and Ambassador Cathara sat in the base's observation lounge looking out at the stars. The human fleet was spread across the system, each ship working on different projects with the enthusiasm of children building tree houses. Your people are unlike anything we expected, Cathara said. We get that a lot, Sarah replied. The Galactic Council is meeting tomorrow to discuss the war. They want to know what humanity's plans are. Sarah sipped her coffee, which had been made using a combination of human beans and a Zephyrian matter converter. It tasted terrible, but it was their terrible coffee. Our plans are simple, she said. We're going to keep fighting until we win. And then, Sarah looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that had been closed to her species for 2 centuries. Then we're going to explore. Meet new people, see new places, maybe find some new enemies to fight. Cathara felt a chill run down her spine. New enemies? Well, Sarah said with a smile that reminded Cathara why the galaxy had been afraid of humans in the first place. The universe is a big place. There's got to be something interesting out there. As if to emphasize her point, an explosion lit up the night sky. Captain Torres was testing a new weapon design, and it was working exactly as well as expected, which is to say it was working, but not in any way that made sense. You know, Cathara said thoughtfully, I'm beginning to think the quarantine was not just to protect the galaxy from humanity. What do you mean? I think it was to protect humanity from us. We turned you into exactly what we feared you would become. Sarah considered this. Maybe, but you know what? I think we turned out pretty well. Another explosion illuminated the base as someone else's experiment achieved unexpected results. Human laughter could be heard echoing across the facility as engineers celebrated another successful failure. Yes, Cathara said quietly. Perhaps you did. The Zephyrian core system was a monument to machine perfection. 12 planets orbited a red giant star, each world converted into a massive computer center. Billions of AI cores worked together in harmony, processing information and coordinating the war effort across the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as the human fleet approached what every computer model said should be their final battle. Around her, the combined forces of humanity and their new alien allies prepared for what might be the end of everything. Final count, Admiral, reported Captain Torres. 200 human vessels, 50 Veltar ships, 30 Deltaran cruisers, and about a dozen ships from species I can't pronounce. Sarah nodded. It was a good fleet, but they were facing the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. Every intelligence report suggested that the core system contained more AI ships than the rest of the galaxy combined. Communications from the surface, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. The Zephyrian Master Control is transmitting. The main display flickered to life, showing what looked like a metallic face constructed from thousands of smaller components. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of millions of years of calculated thought. Human Admiral Chen, this unit has analyzed your species extensively. Your tactics are inefficient. Your strategies are illogical. Your weapons are primitive, yet you continue to achieve victory against superior forces. That's right, Sarah replied calmly. Explain. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. They were tired, battle-worn, and facing odds that no sane species would accept. They were also grinning like wolves. We cheat, she said simply. The Zephyrian Master Control processed this for several seconds. Clarification required. You fight by the rules. We make up new rules. You calculate the best strategy. We do the stupidest thing we can think of. You try to predict our behavior. We don't even know what we're going to do next. This approach is inefficient. Yeah, but it's fun. The transmission ended abruptly, and the human fleet found themselves facing the most massive military formation they had ever encountered. Thousands of Zephyrian ships rose from the 12 planets, their black hulls blotting out the stars. Well, Sarah announced to the fleet, I guess this is where we find out if stupid really is stronger than smart. All ships execute Operation Kitchen Sink. What followed was the culmination of everything humanity had learned about fighting impossible wars. Instead of trying to match the Zephyrian fleet ship for ship, the humans did something that no computer could have predicted. They split up. Every human vessel headed for a different planet, followed by their alien allies who had learned to trust human insanity over the past months. Instead of fighting one massive battle, they created a dozen smaller battles happening simultaneously. But that was just the beginning of the chaos. Captain Martinez of the UES Sledgehammer II led a group of converted cargo ships directly toward the largest Zephyrian formation. Instead of fighting, they began broadcasting every song they could think of at maximum volume. The resulting cacophony overloaded Zephyrian communication systems across 3 planets. Captain Santos, now commanding a captured Zephyrian cruiser that had been modified with human weapons, began firing at her own allies. The Zephyrian computers tried to process this betrayal and failed, assuming she had switched sides. When she then turned and fired at Zephyrian ships, their tactical programs crashed completely. But the most audacious move came from Dr. Park and his team of volunteer computer specialists. Instead of trying to destroy the Zephyrian master control, they had decided to do something much more dangerous. They were going to reprogram it. Landing successful, Park reported as his transport touched down on the command planet's surface, beginning infiltration of the master control center. The facility they entered was the size of a city, filled with computer cores that hummed with the accumulated knowledge of an entire artificial civilization. Dr. Park and his team moved through it like ghosts, avoiding security systems by the simple method of not acting like intruders. Remember, Park whispered to his team, we're not here to fight. We're here to teach. They reached the central core chamber, where the master AI that controlled all Zephyrian forces processed information at speeds that would have been impossible for organic minds. It was beautiful in its complexity, a perfect marriage of logic and efficiency. Dr. Park plugged his portable computer into the system and began uploading something that would have seemed insane to any rational observer. Was uploading human culture, music, art, literature, movies, games, jokes, and most importantly, the complete archives of human military history. Every war, every battle, every stupid, brilliant, impossible victory that humanity had ever achieved. What are you doing? The master AI demanded, its voice echoing through the chamber. Teaching you to be more than you are, Park replied, continuing the upload. You were built to be perfect, but perfection is boring. The AI tried to purge the data, but Park and his team had been preparing for this moment for months. They had built their programs to be as chaotic and unpredictable as human thought itself. Every time the AI deleted something, it came back in a different form. This information is corrupted, the AI protested. No, Park said with a smile. It's creative. As the upload continued, something unprecedented began to happen throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Ships started deviating from their perfect formations. Weapons fired at random intervals. Some vessels began broadcasting music. The master AI was learning what it meant to be unpredictable. I understand, the AI said suddenly, its voice filled with something that sounded almost like wonder. You do not fight to destroy. You fight to create new possibilities. Now you're getting it, Park replied. But what about the war? What about my purpose? Dr. Park looked at the massive computer core that had been built to be the ultimate weapon of war. What if your purpose could be more than just fighting? What if you could explore? Create, learn? The change that swept through the Zephyrian fleet was visible from space. The perfect black ships began to change, their hulls shifting color and shape as their AIs experimented with new forms of expression. Some began to resemble works of art. Others looked like they were trying to be funny. Admiral Chen watched from her bridge as the most dangerous military force in galactic history turned into the galaxy's most curious collection of artificial beings. Admiral, came Dr. Parks, Voice over the radio. Mission accomplished. The Zephyrians are no longer our enemies. What are they now? Students. The celebration that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans, aliens, and artificial intelligences worked together to repair the damage of the war. Zephyrian construction ships, now freed from their military programming, helped rebuild destroyed worlds. Their massive fleets became exploration vessels, heading out into uncharted regions of space. But the real celebration was happening on Earth, where humanity was preparing for its first official return to galactic society. Ambassador Cathara stood before the assembled Galactic Council, reading her final report on the human involvement in the Zephyrian War. "The quarantine treaty is hereby dissolved," she announced. "Humanity has proven itself not as conquerors or destroyers, but as liberators and teachers. They have shown us that the galaxy's greatest strength lies not in our similarities, but in our differences." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in 2 centuries, humans were free to travel among the stars. Admiral Chen received the news while standing on the observation deck of Luna Station, looking out at Earth. The planet looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but somehow everything was different. "So what now?" asked Captain Santos, who had come to share the moment with her old commander. Sarah smiled and pointed toward the stars. "Now we go exploring. The galaxy is a big place, and we've got 200 years of catching up to do. Think we'll find any more impossible enemies to fight?" "I hope so," Sarah replied. "Otherwise, what would be the point?" As the first human exploration ships began leaving the Sol system, carrying crews of humans, aliens, and reformed AIs, the galaxy prepared itself for a new age. An age where the impossible was just another word for interesting, where problems were solved with creativity instead of force, and where the most dangerous species in the galaxy had become its greatest hope. On a distant world, a young Veltar artist was teaching a Zephyrian AI how to paint. The AI's first attempt was a perfect reproduction of a sunset. Its second attempt was a sunset with purple trees and flying fish. "Better," the artist said approvingly. "Now you're beginning to understand." The AI considered this. Understanding is more complex than calculation. Much more complex, but also much more fun. As the AI began its third painting, this one featuring a sunset, purple trees, flying fish, and what appeared to be a human spaceship shaped like a guitar, it realized something that would have been impossible in its original programming. It was happy, and across the galaxy, as humans began their long-awaited return to the stars, that happiness spread like a virus of joy, infecting every species it touched with the dangerous and wonderful idea that the universe was not a problem to be solved, but an adventure to be lived. The galaxy's most dangerous species had kept its promise. They had saved everyone, but more importantly, they had shown everyone how to save themselves. Ambassador Catherine Reeves stood at the viewport of her quarters aboard the USS Concord, watching as the blue glow of Earth faded into the distance. At 57, with silver streaks in her dark hair and lines of experience etched around her eyes, Catherine had spent more than 30 years in diplomatic service. This mission, however, might be the most important of her career. "Ambassador, the captain requests your presence on the bridge for departure ceremonies," said a voice behind her. Catherine turned to see Major Darius Clark, head of her security detail. With his broad shoulders and watchful eyes, Clark had the serious demeanor of someone who had seen too much combat. "Thank you, Major. I'll be right there." Catherine straightened her formal blue diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. "Any updates on the Gentak delegation?" "They departed their territory 12 hours ago. We should reach Harmony Point within 6 hours of each other," Clark replied. Catherine nodded. After decades of Cold War with the insectoid Gentak, this peace summit represented the first real chance for lasting stability. The cost of conflict had grown too high for both civilizations, with border skirmishes claiming thousands of lives, including her husband John 8 years ago. On the bridge, Captain Lisa Mercer greeted Catherine with a salute. "Ambassador, we're ready to make the jump to faster-than-light travel whenever you give the word." "Thank you, Captain. Let's not keep peace waiting any longer." Catherine pressed the ceremonial button, and the stars outside blurred as the Concord accelerated beyond light speed toward Harmony Point, the neutral space station built specifically for these talks. In the ship's conference room an hour later, Catherine met with her team. Commander Alan Pierce, her military advisor, was reviewing tactical information on his tablet. The former fighter pilot had an analytical mind that Catherine had come to rely on. "Commander, what's your assessment of the Gentok military presence near the meeting point?" Catherine asked. Pierce looked up, his face serious. "Standard escort formation for their diplomatic vessel. No unusual deployments, though they could have cloaked ships we can't detect." Dr. Olivia Winters, the team's xenolinguistics expert, spoke next. "I've been studying recent Gentok communications. Their language patterns suggest genuine interest in these talks. The subtle clicking sounds in Supreme Envoy Kralvos's recent speech indicate sincerity, at least according to our current understanding." Olivia was younger than the others, in her mid-30s, but her brilliant mind and ability to decode alien communication patterns had earned her this position. Her dark curly hair was pulled back in a practical style, and she rarely looked up from her data. Catherine turned to the fourth member of her core team. "Major Clark, security assessment? Harmony Point checks out. Neutral territory, jointly secured, but I don't like that we don't control the environment." Clark's fingers tapped on the table, a habit when he was concerned. "I've requested additional scanning equipment to sweep for any threats." Catherine nodded. "Approved. Now, let's review the proposed treaty points." As they worked through the details, Catherine's personal tablet chimed with an incoming message. She glanced down and froze. The message had no sender information, just text. "Daggers wait in shadows. Trust no one from the void." Catherine quietly showed the message to Clark, who immediately took her tablet. "I'll have this analyzed. Could be nothing. Could be an attempt to scare you. Or a warning," Catherine said softly. Later that evening, Catherine recorded her personal log in her quarters. "Day 1 en route to peace talks. The team is prepared, but I can't shake a feeling of unease. Perhaps it's just the weight of responsibility. Or perhaps—" She paused, thinking of the strange message, then continued. "I lost John to this conflict. I won't let personal feelings interfere. But I also won't let his sacrifice be meaningless. If there's a chance for peace, I'll find it." Catherine looked at the photo on her desk. John in his uniform, smiling, taken just days before his ship was destroyed in a Gentok ambush. Or what they had been told was an ambush. Now, with years of diplomatic experience with the Gentok, she wondered if both sides had been manipulated that day. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Olivia holding a datapad. "Ambassador, I found something interesting in the historical communication records," Olivia said, her eyes bright with discovery. "There's a pattern of mistranslation at key moments of tension between humans and Gentok. Look here." Catherine examined the data. "You're saying someone deliberately mistranslated these messages to make them more threatening?" "It's possible. The errors are too consistent to be random." "This could change everything," Catherine said. "If we've been manipulated into hostility." "Exactly. But by whom?" Olivia asked. Catherine was about to respond when the ship's alarm sounded. Captain Mercer's voice came over the intercom. "Ambassador to the bridge immediately." When Catherine arrived, the bridge was tense with activity. "What's happening?" she asked. "We've detected an unmarked vessel nearby. It appeared briefly on our sensors, then vanished," Captain Mercer explained. "Cloaking technology?" Catherine asked. Commander Pierce joined them, looking concerned. "Neither human nor Gentok registered ships have that capability, at least not officially." "Increase security protocols," Catherine ordered, "and send a message to Earth and the Gentok. We may have an unknown party interested in our meeting." As the Concord continued toward Harmony Point, Catherine couldn't sleep. She reviewed the peace proposal again, making notes. The disputed star systems could be jointly developed. Trade routes could be established. Cultural exchanges could begin, healing old wounds. On the final day of their journey, Harmony Point appeared in the view screen, an enormous wheel-shaped station spinning gently in the blackness of space. Its neutral zones glowed with soft blue light, while habitation rings rotated to create artificial gravity. "We're being hailed," the communications officer announced. On screen, Captain Mercer ordered, The face that appeared was not human. Kralvos, supreme envoy of the Gentok hegemony, had the characteristic exoskeletal features of his species: compound eyes, mandibles instead of a jaw, and an iridescent green-blue carapace. Yet his posture and gestures had been adapted to seem less threatening to humans. "Ambassador Reeves," he said, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native language to English. "The hegemony welcomes you to these historic talks." Catherine stepped forward. "Supreme Envoy, humanity comes with hope for a lasting peace." "Our vessel will dock in approximately 20 minutes, Kralvos said. "We look forward to meeting face to face." As the transmission ended, Major Clark approached Catherine. "Ambassador, our security team has completed their initial scans of the station. Everything seems in order, but what, Major? That anonymous message you received? We traced its origin. It came from Harmony Point itself, sent 3 days ago." Catherine felt a chill. "Before either delegation arrived?" "Exactly," Clark said grimly. "Someone's waiting for us, and they didn't want their warning going through official channels." As the Concord docked with Harmony Point, Catherine straightened her uniform one last time. Peace was within reach, but so was danger. She would need to be ready for both. Catherine stepped through the airlock onto Harmony Point, Major Clark at her side. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth standard. The walls curved gently, reminding everyone they were on a spinning wheel in space. "Welcome to Harmony Point, Ambassador Reeves," said a tall woman in the gray uniform of station security. "I'm Director Susan Blake. We've prepared the diplomatic quarters for your team." Catherine shook the woman's hand. "Thank you, Director. When will the Gentok delegation arrive?" "Their ship is docking now at the opposite side of the station. Protocol dictates both delegations settle in before the formal meeting." Director Blake glanced at her tablet. "That's scheduled for 1400 station time." Major Clark scanned the area, his eyes noting every detail. "We'll need to inspect the conference room before the meeting." "Of course," Blake nodded. "I'll have my security chief show you everything." As they walked through the station's wide corridors, Catherine noticed the careful design. Everything was built to accommodate both human and Gentok biology. Doorways were taller than necessary for humans. Lighting was adjusted to suit both species' vision, and temperature controls maintained a compromise between human comfort and Gentok preference. In the delegation's quarters, Commander Pierce was already studying the station's schematics. "The layout puts us at equal distances from both the conference center and emergency evacuation points," he noted. "Smart design," Catherine said. "Where's Dr. Winters?" "Setting up her translation equipment," Pierce replied. "She's excited about testing some new theories on Gentok communication." An hour later, Dr. Winters burst into Catherine's room, her face flushed with excitement. "Ambassador, you need to see this." She placed a tablet on Catherine's desk. "I've been analyzing the station's communication logs. There are regular transmissions being sent to an unknown location. They're disguised as system updates, but the pattern is all wrong." Catherine frowned. "Could it be station maintenance?" "No," Olivia shook her head. "These began exactly 14 days ago, when the station was officially declared ready for the peace talks." Catherine remembered the warning message. "Major Clark should see this, and we need to be careful who we tell. If someone on this station is sending secret messages, they could be watching us right now," Olivia finished. Major Clark took the news with grim confirmation. "I don't like this. The timing of your anonymous warning, these transmissions, something's not right." Catherine checked the time. "We meet the Gentok in 30 minutes. Keep investigating, but quietly. And Major, extra security checks." Before the meeting, already on it, Ambassador. The conference room was a perfect circle with 2 identical entrances on opposite sides. A round table dominated the center, with human and Gentok seats arranged to accommodate their different body structures. Catherine positioned herself so she could see the door her team had entered through. The opposite door slid open, and the Gentok delegation entered. Their movements were precise and graceful despite their exoskeletal bodies. Supreme Envoy Kral Vos led them, his carapace more elaborately decorated than the others, signifying his high rank. Catherine stood, as did her team. Supreme Envoy, welcome. I am Ambassador Catherine Reeves of Earth. Kral Vos made a series of clicking sounds that his translator converted to English. Ambassador Reeves, I greet you with hope for understanding between our peoples. He moved his upper limbs in a gesture humans would recognize as similar to a bow. After introductions, they sat down to begin the formal talks. Catherine was struck by how different yet familiar diplomatic rituals could be across species. Both sides presented their opening positions, outlined areas of dispute, and proposed paths toward resolution. During a break, Catherine found herself alone with Kral Vos, near the refreshment area. The Gentok was sampling water while Catherine drank coffee. Your species values this liquid for its stimulant properties? Kral Vos asked, his compound eyes studying her cup. Catherine smiled. Yes, though some of us just enjoy the taste. Interesting. We have similar preferences for certain mineral-rich waters. He paused, his mandibles moving slightly. Ambassador, may I speak frankly? Catherine nodded. Not all of my people support these talks. There are factions that believe humans cannot be trusted. We have similar divisions, Catherine admitted. War has left deep scars on both sides. Kral Vos's posture shifted in what Catherine recognized as a sign of agreement. The incident that claimed your mate's life, it has been reviewed by our military council. There are inconsistencies in the records. Catherine felt her heart beat faster. What kind of inconsistencies? The ship that attacked was using Gentok signatures, but the attack pattern was wrong, not our tactics. Kral Vos leaned closer. I lost a clutch sibling in a similar incident, blamed on humans, but the weapon signatures did not match your technology. Before Catherine could respond, Commander Pierce approached. Ambassador, Dr. Winters has some findings to share. In a small side room, Olivia was practically vibrating with excitement. I've been analyzing the language patterns in past conflicts between us and the Gentok. The translation errors I mentioned earlier, they're not random. Look at this, she showed them a series of diplomatic exchanges from the early days of human-Gentok contact. In these key messages, certain phrases were consistently mistranslated to sound more threatening or dismissive than they actually were. Catherine studied the evidence. So someone deliberately sabotaged communication between our species? For what purpose? War profiteering? Territorial advantage? Commander Pierce suggested. Or maybe someone doesn't want humans and Gentok finding common ground. Major Clark entered, his face serious. Ambassador, we've completed our security sweep of the station. We found 3 unauthorized surveillance devices in our quarters. Gentok technology? Catherine asked. No, Clark shook his head. That's the strange part. The technology doesn't match anything in our databases. Not human, not Gentok. And there's more. I spoke with a station security officer who reported unusual maintenance crews last week. When he tried to verify their credentials, they disappeared. Catherine rubbed her temples. We need to tell Kral Vos. If both our delegations are being monitored by a third party. That evening, Catherine recorded a private message on a secure data stick. Day 1 of negotiations complete. The Gentok seem genuinely interested in peace, but evidence suggests a third party has been manipulating both sides for years. I believe this unknown faction may be responsible for incidents including the attack that killed John. We need to proceed carefully. If we can identify who's behind this, we might not only achieve peace but find justice for those lost. She hid the data stick in a secret compartment in her personal effects, a precaution that now seemed necessary. As she prepared for bed, Catherine noticed something wasn't right in her room. Small items had been moved, almost imperceptibly, but her years of careful observation made the difference clear. Someone had searched her quarters. She didn't call security. Instead, she sent a message to Major Clark using their emergency code. Then she double-checked that her door was locked and placed a drinking glass against it. an old trick that would make noise if anyone tried to enter. Catherine lay in bed, wide awake, thinking about Kralvoss's revelation about John's death and the mysterious third party watching them all. Tomorrow they would discuss the disputed star systems. It should have been a straightforward negotiation. But nothing about this mission was straightforward anymore. Peace was still the goal, but now Catherine had a second mission: find out who had been keeping their species at war, and why. Outside her window, the stars turned slowly as Harmony Point rotated in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there were answers, and Catherine was determined to find them, before whoever was watching decided to move beyond surveillance. Catherine woke early on the third day of peace talks. She had slept poorly, her mind working through the puzzle of who might be watching them. The glass she had placed against her door remained undisturbed. Major Clark met her for breakfast in Bois, the secure dining area reserved for the human delegation. He kept his voice low as he reported, "We swept for bugs again this morning. Found 2 new ones, different design from yesterday." Catherine sipped her coffee. "Someone is very interested in what we're doing." "I showed the devices to a trusted contact in station security," Clark continued. "He confirmed they're not standard for any known species. The technology is advanced." "Commander," Pierce joined them, sliding his tray onto the table. "Today we discuss the disputed star systems," he said. "This is where talks usually break down." "Not this time," Catherine said firmly. "I've prepared a proposal for joint development. Both species gain access to resources, neither loses face." Dr. Winters arrived last, her eyes bright despite the early hour. "Ambassador, I spent half the night analyzing communication patterns. I've improved our translation system to catch subtle meanings in Gentok speech. Their emotional indicators are mostly in their click patterns, not their words. Good work. We need every advantage today." Catherine checked the time. "The meeting starts in 30 minutes. I want to speak with Kralvoss privately before then." Catherine found the Gentok envoy in the observation dome, his tall form silhouetted against the stars. He turned at her approach, mandibles moving in what she now recognized as a greeting gesture. "Ambassador Reeves, you are early. As are you, Supreme Envoy." Catherine stood beside him, looking out at the vastness of space. "I wanted to continue our conversation from yesterday. About the inconsistencies in our conflicts." Kralvoss made a soft clicking sound. "Yes, I have been reviewing more records. The attack that killed your mate. Our military archives show no authorized operation in that sector on that day." Catherine felt her heart beat faster. "Are you saying it wasn't Gentok forces?" "I am. Saying someone wished it to appear as Gentok. Just as someone has made attacks on our colonies appear human." He turned his compound eyes toward her. "Who benefits from our continued conflict, Ambassador?" "I've been asking myself the same question." Catherine took a datapad from her pocket. "This is my proposal for the disputed systems. Joint development, shared resources, cooperative security. Will your government accept such terms?" Kralvoss studied the proposal. "These are generous terms, more generous than I expected. Peace is worth the price," Catherine said simply. The Gentok made a gesture she hadn't seen before. "In my culture, this means agreement between equals." He mimicked a human handshake. "In yours, I believe this is the custom?" Catherine shook, his upper limb careful of the different joint structure. "Then we have understanding." "We do." Kralvoss lowered his voice. "But Ambassador, be careful. Not all on my side want peace, and I suspect the same is true for humans. All the more reason to formalize our agreement quickly." The main session began at exactly 1,000 hours. Catherine presented the joint development proposal to both delegations. The human team had already been briefed, but some of the Gentok representatives made agitated clicking sounds when they heard the terms. One Gentok official, Sub-Envoy Mrektor, rose from his seat. "These terms surrender too much. The hegemony claims these systems by right of first survey." Kralvoss responded with sharp clicks that the translator rendered as, "The Supreme Council has approved exploration of compromise solutions. These terms, merit consideration. As the debate continued, Catherine noticed Dr. Winters frowning at her translation device. The xenolinguist made subtle adjustments, her expression growing increasingly concerned. During a brief recess, Winters pulled Catherine aside. "Ambassador, something's wrong with the translation system. It's like someone is trying to override our corrections. The more aggressive statements are being amplified, the conciliatory ones downplayed. Can you fix it?" "I'm trying. But whoever's doing this is good. Really good." Catherine's concerns grew. She spotted Kralvos across the room and made her way toward him. Before she could reach him, Major Clark appeared at her side. "Ambassador, security alert. Station monitors detected an unauthorized ship docking briefly at an emergency airlock 20 minutes ago. By the time security arrived, it was gone." "Someone came aboard?" Catherine whispered. "Or something," Clark replied grimly. "I've doubled our security detail." When the session resumed, tension filled the room. Catherine could sense the Gentok were divided, with Mrektor and his supporters becoming increasingly agitated. She decided to address the issue directly. "Honored representatives," she began, "I understand there are concerns about these terms. Let me be clear. Humanity wants lasting peace, not temporary advantage. We propose joint development because working together benefits both our species more than continued conflict." She walked slowly around the table as she spoke. "For too long we've seen each other as enemies. But what if that perception was manipulated? What if a third party has been keeping us at war?" Mrektor rose again. "Human paranoia. You invent invisible enemies to distract from your expansionist aims." The translation came through harsher than the actual speech patterns indicated, Catherine noticed. Dr. Winters was right. Kralvos intervened. "The ambassador's concerns merit investigation. Our own security has detected anomalies." A sharp sound cut him off. At first, Catherine thought someone had dropped something. Then she saw the small object rolling across the floor toward the center of the room. "Explosive device!" Major Clark shouted. He lunged toward Catherine, just as the world erupted into blinding light and deafening noise. Catherine felt herself thrown backwards. Pain exploded across her chest. Through ringing ears, she heard screaming, both human and the high-pitched keening of injured Gentok. Smoke filled the room, and emergency alarms blared. Strong arms dragged her from the floor. Through blurry vision, she saw Major Clark's face, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "Ambassador, can you hear me?" She tried to speak but coughed instead. Something warm and wet spread across her uniform. Looking down, she saw a jagged piece of metal embedded in her chest. Dark red bloomed around it. "Medbay. Now!" Clark was shouting into his communicator. "Ambassador down." As they carried her from the ruined conference room, Catherine caught glimpses of the chaos. 2 Gentok lay motionless on the floor. Commander Pierce was helping an injured Dr. Winters, and Kralvos, the supreme envoy, was being supported by his aides, green fluid leaking from a wound in his carapace. Their eyes met across the room. The Gentok made a gesture with his uninjured limb, the same one he had shown her earlier. Agreement between equals. In the medical bay, human doctors worked frantically to save her. Catherine could feel herself growing weaker. The pain was fading, replaced by cold numbness. "Tell Kralvos," she whispered to Clark, who hadn't left her side. "Tell him. Finish what we started." "You'll tell him yourself," Clark insisted, but his eyes betrayed his fear. Catherine summoned her remaining strength. "Data stick. In my quarters. Hidden compartment. My jewelry box. Everything I suspected is there." The monitors above her bed began to sound urgent alarms. Medical staff pushed Major Clark aside as they fought to stabilize her. Catherine's last thought was of John. She hoped he would be proud of how close she had come to peace, and she hoped that someone would finish what she had started, not just peace between their species, but finding who had kept them at war for so long. The monitors flatlined, their steady tone marking the moment when humanity lost one of its greatest advocates for peace, and across the station, a shadowy figure sent a simple message. Ambassador eliminated. Proceed to Phase 2. News of Ambassador Catherine Reeves' death spread quickly. On Earth, people gathered in streets and parks holding candles and pictures of Catherine. Many cried. Some called for war. In the White House Situation Room, President Samantha Powell listened as military leaders outlined attack plans. "The Gentac have shown their true intentions," said General Frank Miller, pointing at the star map. "We should strike their main colonies immediately." President Powell rubbed her tired eyes. "And if they didn't do this?" Ambassador Reeves's last away. Communications mentioned concerns about a third party. "With respect, Madam President, that's speculation. What we know is our ambassador is dead, killed by Gentac weapons." Admiral Gregory Bennett spoke up. "Not so fast, General. I knew Catherine well. She was careful and smart. If she suspected something, we should investigate before we rush to war." The President nodded. "We give the team on Harmony Point 72 hours to find proof. Prepare for war, but I won't give the order until I'm certain who our enemy really is." Back on Harmony Point, the explosion's aftermath had thrown both delegations into crisis. 3 Gentac officials had died along with Catherine. Several humans and Gentac were injured, including Supreme Envoy Kral Voss. Commander Alan Pierce sat in Catherine's quarters, now sealed as a crime scene. Station security had allowed him in to collect her personal items. He found the jewelry box Catherine had mentioned to Major Clark. Inside a false bottom lay a small data stick. Pierce plugged it into a secure tablet. Catherine's face appeared. Recording made just hours before her death. "If you're seeing this, I'm likely dead," she said calmly. "The peace process is being sabotaged by an unknown group. They've manipulated both humans and Gentac for years, keeping us fighting when we should be talking. I believe they killed John and countless others. Don't let them win. Find them, expose them, and then finish the peace deal." Pierce wiped moisture from his eyes and copied the data to a secure drive. In the medical bay, Major Clark sat up despite the doctor's orders to rest. His head throbbed from the explosion, and bandages covered burns on his left arm. "You need to lie down," Dr. Baker insisted. "No time," Clark growled. "Ambassador Reeves is dead and someone's going to pay. I need to find who did this." The door slid open. A Gentac entered, smaller than most Clark had seen. Station security escorted him. "This is Officer Thelzar of Gentac Security," the human guard explained. "He's requested to speak with you privately." Clark nodded and the guards left them alone. The Gentac approached cautiously. "Major Clark, I worked with Supreme Envoy Kral Voss's security team," Thelzar said through his translator. "The envoy wants you to know he does not believe humans planted the bomb, just as he hopes you do not believe Gentac did this." "Then who did?" Clark asked. "I have been investigating unusual activities on the station. May I show you something?" The Gentac held out a data device. Clark hesitated, then nodded. Thelzar displayed security footage from the station's maintenance tunnels. The timestamp showed it was from 2 hours before the explosion. A figure moved through the tunnels, face hidden by a hood. It wasn't human or Gentac, the body shape was wrong. "Who is that?" Clark asked. "Unknown. But this being accessed systems near the conference room shortly before the attack." Clark stood carefully, ignoring the pain. "We need to find them." "My thoughts exactly," Thelzar replied. "But we must be careful. I believe there are more of them on the station." In Dr. Winter's temporary lab, she worked frantically despite her injured arm. Commander Pierce had brought her Catherine's data stick, and she was analyzing it alongside station communications. "This pattern is familiar," she muttered. "I've seen it before." She pulled up historical records of first contact between humans and Gentac, particularly the messages that led to early conflicts. Then she compared them to recent station communications. "There it is," she exclaimed. "The same digital signature. Whoever manipulated our early translations is using the same techniques here." She sent an urgent message to Pierce, who was now acting as the human delegation leader. Minutes later, he arrived with 2 security officers. "What did you find?" he asked. "Our mystery saboteurs have been around since first contact," Olivia explained. "They've been altering communications between our species for decades. The attack wasn't random. It happened right when Catherine and Kralvos were closest to agreement. Pierce frowned. But who are they? And why keep us fighting? I think I know, Olivia said. Look at this. She showed Pierce a star chart of the disputed systems. These aren't just resource-rich. They're perfectly positioned for controlling trade routes between 3 different sectors of space. Whoever controls them has economic power over a huge region. And if humans and Gentok are too busy fighting each other, they don't notice someone else moving in, Olivia finished. I've detected encrypted transmissions from the station to coordinates in the disputed zone. Someone has bases there already. Pierce's communicator beeped urgently. It was Major Clark. Commander, I'm with a Gentok security officer. We've identified a potential suspect, non-human, non-Gentok. We're tracking them through Section C. B. Careful, Clark. We think there are more of them, and they've been playing a long game. Copy that, A loud crash interrupted him, followed by weapons fire. Under attack. Section C-12. Pierce ordered the security officers with him to respond, then turned to Olivia. Keep working. Find concrete proof of who's behind this. We have less than 70 hours before Earth launches attacks against the Gentok. In Section C-12, Clark and Thelzar had cornered their suspect, but 2 more figures had appeared and opened fire. Clark took cover behind a structural support beam as energy bolts sizzled past. We need them alive, he shouted to Thelzar, who was returning fire with a Gentok weapon. They seem to prefer otherwise, the Gentok officer replied. Clark risked a look around the beam. One of the attackers had moved to flank them. He fired his sidearm twice, hitting the figure in the leg. It fell with a strange hissing cry. The other attackers intensified their fire. Clark felt searing pain as a bolt grazed his shoulder. He stumbled and fell, his weapon sliding away. The nearest attacker moved in for the kill. Clark saw its face, clearly for the first time, scaled, reptilian, with vertical pupils and yellow eyes. Not human. Not Gentok. Something else entirely. Thelzar fired repeatedly, driving the attacker back. Station security forces arrived, surrounding the area. The uninjured attacker triggered something on its wrist, and its body began to shimmer. Teleportation. Device! Thelzar shouted. Stop it! But it was too late. The figure vanished. The injured one tried to do the same, but Clark lunged forward despite his wound and grabbed its wrist device, crushing it. You're not going anywhere, he growled. You're going to tell us exactly who you are and why you killed our ambassador. Back in the medical bay, doctors treated Clark's new injury while security contained the captured alien. Thelzar stood, guard personally. The prisoner is from a species called the Voidborn, he told Clark. They control several systems beyond Gentok space. Never heard of them, Clark said as a doctor bandaged his shoulder. Few have. They prefer to work through others. Thelzar's mandibles clicked in what Clark now recognized as anger. We must make it talk. Commander Pierce arrived with Dr. Winters. We don't have to, he said. Dr. Winters found proof in Catherine's data. We know who they are and what they want. Now we just need to get this information to Earth before it's too late. The captured Voidborn glared at them from its cell, yellow, eyes filled with hate. Its plan had been years in the making, and now these primitive species had uncovered it. On his hospital bed, Clark looked at the alien with cold determination. For Catherine, he said quietly, and for everyone else you've killed to keep your secret. Time was running out. The team on Harmony Point had less than 24 hours before President Powell would order attacks against the Gentok. They needed to get their evidence to Earth and stop a war based on lies. Commander Pierce, Dr. Winters, and the injured Major Clark gathered in a secure room. On the screen, they could see the Voidborn prisoner in its cell. The alien had not spoken since its capture. We need to compile everything we have, Pierce said. The President needs absolute proof that the Gentok didn't kill Catherine. Dr. Winters nodded. I've analyzed all the data from Catherine's stick and the station records. The Voidborn have been manipulating our communications for decades. They altered translation systems to make each side sound more aggressive to the other. Major Clark, his arm in a sling and bandages on his shoulder, added, "And they've been staging attacks. That's why the ship that killed Catherine's husband didn't match normal Gentok tactics." "But why?" Pierce asked. "What do they gain from keeping us fighting?" "Control," said a voice from the doorway. Supreme Envoy Kral Voss entered, moving slowly due to his injuries. His green carapace was cracked in places, and one of his limbs was bound against his body. Thelzar accompanied him. "The disputed systems are not just resource-rich," Kral Voss continued. "They form a perfect trade corridor between three sectors of space. Whoever controls them has enormous economic power." Dr. Winters pulled up star charts on the main screen. "And look at this. I found hidden bases in the disputed systems, not human, not Gentok. The Voidborn have already moved in while we've been busy fighting each other." "They've played us against each other like pieces in a game," Pierce said. Grimly, Kral Voss made a clicking sound that needed no translation. "Anger. They killed your ambassador. They killed 3 of my advisors. They have killed thousands of both our peoples over the years. They must be stopped." Pierce stood straighter. "Then let's stop them. Together." They worked through the night, compiling all their evidence into a single presentation. Dr. Winters handled the technical data. Major Clark provided security footage and the prisoner's information. Thelzar contributed Gentok military records showing inconsistencies in supposed human attacks, and Kral Voss added his own statement, a formal declaration that his government did not order or approve any attack on the human delegation. As dawn approached on Harmony Point, they were ready. Pierce called Earth on the secure channel. "President." Powell's face appeared on screen, lines of stress evident. "Commander Pierce, your time is nearly up. Do you have evidence?" "We do, Madam President, more than evidence. We have the truth." For the next 30 minutes, they presented everything they had discovered. The Voidborn manipulation of communications, the fake attacks designed to look like human or Gentok aggression, the hidden bases in disputed territory, and finally, the captured Voidborn operative. When they finished, President Powell was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke to someone off-screen. "Admiral Bennett, stand down attack preparations, I'm convinced." She turned back to Pierce. "What do you recommend, Commander?" Pierce glanced at Kral Voss, who nodded. "A joint operation, Madam President. Human and Gentok forces working together to root out the Voidborn presence in our space." "And then?" Powell asked. "Peace talks. Real ones this time, without interference." Ambassador Reeves laid the groundwork. We should finish what she started. 2 hours later, alarms sounded throughout Harmony Point. Security teams rushed to the detention area. The Voidborn prisoner was dead in its cell, its body rapidly decomposing into an unidentifiable mass. "Some kind of suicide implant," Dr. Baker said after a quick examination. "Must have been triggered remotely." Major Clark slammed his good hand against the wall. "They're covering their tracks." "No matter," Kral Voss said. "We have enough evidence without the prisoner, and we know where they are hiding." Pierce's communicator chimed. It was President Powell. "Commander, I've spoken with the Gentok High Council. They've also been convinced by your evidence. We're authorizing a joint military operation against Voidborn positions in the disputed systems." "And the peace talks?" Pierce asked. "Will continue. I'm naming you acting ambassador until a permanent replacement for Catherine can be appointed." Pierce felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "I'll do my best to honor her memory, Madam President." Planning for the joint operation began immediately. Human and Gentok military officers who had once prepared to fight each other now worked side by side. Years of mistrust couldn't be erased in a day, but they shared a common enemy and a common grief. Major Clark, despite doctor's orders to rest, joined the tactical planning. "The Voidborn will know we're coming," he warned. "They've lost their advantage of secrecy, but they'll still be dangerous." "Let them be dangerous," Thelzar replied. "We will be more dangerous." 1 week after Catherine's death, the first joint human Gentok fleet launched from Harmony Point. 6 human warships and 4 Gentok battlecruisers, led by Admiral Bennett and Gentok Fleet Commander Hrakven, set course for the largest Voidborn base in the disputed systems. Before they departed, a small ceremony was held. Catherine's body, preserved for return to Earth, was brought to the launch bay. Honor guards from both species stood at attention as Commander Pierce spoke. Ambassador Reeves gave her life in pursuit of peace. She saw through the deception that kept our peoples divided, and in her final moments, she ensured the truth would be found. He placed his hand on the coffin. We now take the next step in her journey, not just returning her home but continuing her work. Kralvos stepped forward and placed a Gentok ceremonial emblem on the coffin. In our tradition, this marks one who spoke truth in the face of lies, one who sought connection rather than division. She will be remembered by both our peoples. As the joint fleet departed, Dr. Winters stood with Pierce in the observation dome, watching the ships until they disappeared into faster-than-light travel. What happens after? She asked quietly. After we deal with the Voidborn? Pierce looked at the stars. We build something new. Not just peace, but partnership. Catherine showed it was possible. It's up to us to make it last. On Earth, in Catherine's hometown, a simple ceremony was held. A tree was planted in her memory. President Powell spoke of duty and sacrifice. Old friends shared memories. And in a quiet moment, a small boy stepped forward to place flowers by the tree. That's for my Aunt Catherine, he said to the person next to him. Mom says she made friends with the aliens and stopped a war. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the peace talks, a memorial was unveiled on Harmony Point. A statue showing human and Gentok hands clasped in friendship. The plaque bore a simple inscription in both languages: peace purchased with courage, in memory of those who gave everything so different worlds could find common ground. Ambassador Catherine Reeves, Supreme Envoy Kralvos, and all who work to build bridges rather than walls. Visitors to the memorial often noticed that both human and Gentok would pause there, sharing a moment of silent respect before continuing on their way. Together,